Hi there, welcome to my review for Capernaum, or however you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. Which is the new film coming out this year. It's doing the festival circuit. It won the jury prize at Cannes, and it's done quite well. It's been fairly well received, and it's a film that really stands out. In fact, it's a film which I watched and was like, I should really like this film a lot more than I do, because what's really obvious about the film is it's really well put together. It's well made. It's well executed. The command of technique is really top notch, and it's clearly written with good intent, with an interesting idea, and with some really nice parts to it. But it left me a little cold personally, and I go into kind of explain why. So the strengths of this film really is that it's some kind of Dickensian social realist melodrama. It's about a young boy in Lebanon who runs away from his family and ends up in a bunch of stuff. He's trying to find a loving home, and he has lots of strife in his life, and the film is just non-stop hardship for most of its runtime. And in that sense, it's a pretty big tug at the heartstrings, although personally I didn't really attach to it that much. And on that level, it tells an interesting story. The film really picks up though when we get introduced to an Ethiopian immigrant character who has a child, and her story is really interesting. I found her story more interesting than I found the story of the lead child. But what kind of undermines this film a little is that we have this constant hardship, which is the film. The film is building up in hardship, and you expect there to be a kind of very harsh ending, and then we get a series of optimistic twists in the end, which kind of undermine the whole film and ruin what personally I thought was going to be a pretty hard-hitting film. In the end, it becomes a series of missteps. To be fair, the missteps towards the end are all tied into this terrible courtroom story, which is this wraparound around which the whole story is a flashback, kind of. And it's really terrible. The courtroom stuff is way too obnoxiously straining credibility, and it, unfortunately, I find it a bit annoying because the film is this real social realist melodrama, but then it's surrounded by this over-the-top courtroom scene. But what the courtroom scenes do allow actually is a very good discussion on abortion. Although abortion is never mentioned in the film, it actually is very subtle and clever in the way it talks about abortion. It talks about people's right to choose to have children, which I think is brilliantly done and probably the best part of the film. Unfortunately, it is kind of under the surface a bit too much, and it comes to the foreground in the film's weaker parts, so it doesn't particularly hold up as a whole. And I think the film is certainly a film which just didn't work for me personally. I feel like this film is not a film that I'm going to like anyway. As much as I am well documented on Letterboxd and on this channel as loving these kind of films and loving social realism films and loving films that tell perspectives of people who are rarely seen in cinema, perspectives of children in poor places, stories from countries whose cinema rarely gets seen, stories by women and about women who are often marginalised in a lot of societies. I really admire these kind of stories, but this film just didn't click with me in a big way, and I think part of that is because I'm just not someone who's inclined to like this kind of film. I think the audience for this film is people who are going to watch this without being cynical and without expecting any kind of deep contemplation. I think if you watch this and are instantly drawn in by its emotional pull, which is strong, and by the really clear command of technique and the brilliant way that this film is put together, if you're drawn in by that and you're not going to be cynical, there's a lot that this film can offer you. It can offer you a story which is emotional and gripping, a story you'll care about, a story that's well told, and a story that ultimately has has some bright spot. A film that allows you to not just bathe in pure sadness. A film that allows you to have these moments which cynicism probably wouldn't allow you. I am probably too cynical a person to really love what this film was going for. But that said, I totally respect what it went for, what it does, and I really do like the balance of tones. I like the sprinkling of humour in this film. I just think the sprinkling of humour is the only side of the film that's happy and works. I think all the other happy moments are not that good, and I think most of the strengths of the film come through its more depressing aspects. As much as that makes the film tougher to watch and ultimately probably less enjoyable, it probably would have made it a film which I would find more interesting personally. So that's just me though. And so I have to say, all things considered, there's no question this is a good film and probably worth checking out, especially if you're someone who's into this kind of cinema and just aren't as cynical as I am. So that's what I thought. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've seen it, so please leave me a comment. If you like this review, please give it a like. If you want to read more of my reviews, you can follow me on Letterboxd or Twitter, links in the description. If you want to hear more of my reviews, you can subscribe. So thanks for watching, and Capernaum, it's a good film.